The rumors of the demise of the U.S. manufacturing industry are greatly exaggerated. The United States is definitely ahead in culture of innovation. If someone wants to accomplish great things, there is no better place than the U.S. I think a lot of the American people feel more than a little disappointed that the high watermark for human exploration was 1969. The dream of human space travel has almost died for a lot of people. I wouldn't say I have a lack of fear. In fact, I'd like my fear emotion to be less because it's very distracting and fries my nervous system. I've been to Disneyland, like, 10 times. I'm getting really tired of Disneyland. America is the spirit of human exploration distilled. You could warm Mars up, over time, with greenhouse gases. I'm personally a moderate and a registered independent, so I'm not strongly Democratic or strongly Republican. I think most of the important stuff on the internet has been built. There will be continued innovation, for sure, but the great problems of the internet have essentially been solved. If humanity doesn't land on Mars in my lifetime, I would be very disappointed. If anyone has a vested interest in space solar power, it would have to be me. I'm anti-tax, but I'm pro-carbon tax. If we drive down the cost of transportation in space, we can do great things. Nobody wants to buy a $60,000 electric Civic. But people will pay $90,000 for an electric sports car. I feel very strongly that SpaceX would not have been able to get started, nor would we have made the progress that we have, without the help of NASA. Physics is really figuring out how to discover new things that are counterintuitive, like quantum mechanics. It's really counterintuitive. Even if producing CO2 was good for the environment, given that we're going to run out of hydrocarbons, we need to find some sustainable means of operating. What I'm trying to do is to make a significant difference in spaceflight and help make spaceflight accessible to almost anyone. I'd like to dial it back 5% or 10% and try to have a vacation that's not just email with a view. I don't think it's a good idea to plan to sell a company. Winning Motor Trend Car of the Year is probably the closest thing to winning the Oscar or Emmy of the car industry. I'm glad to see that BMW is bringing an electric car to market. That's cool. You need to be in the position where it is the cost of the fuel that actually matters and not the cost of building the rocket in the first place. My vision is for a fully reusable rocket transport system between Earth and Mars that is able to refuel on Mars. This is very important so you don't have to carry the return fuel when you go there. Silicon Valley has some of the smartest engineers and technology business people in the world. A battery by definition is a collection of cells. So the cell is a little can of chemicals. And the challenge is taking a very high energy cell, and a large number of them, and combining them safely into a large battery. My opinion is it's a bridge too far to go to fully autonomous cars. The fuel cell is just a fundamentally inferior way of delivering electrical energy to an electric motor than batteries. The goal of Tesla is to accelerate sustainable energy, so we're going to take a step back and think about what's most likely to achieve that goal. The odds of me coming into the rocket business, not knowing anything about rockets, not having ever built anything, I would have to be insane if I thought the odds were in my favor. In the early days of aviation, there was a great deal of experimentation and a high death rate. I think we have a duty to maintain the light of consciousness to make sure it continues into the future. I just want to retire before I go senile, because if I don't retire before I go senile, then I'll do more damage than good at that point. Self-driving cars are the natural extension of active safety and obviously something we should do. I was born in Africa. I came to California because it's really where new technologies can be brought to fruition, and I don't see a viable competitor. We polled Tesla owners, do you want autopilot disabled or not? Not one person wanted it disabled. That's pretty telling. Silicon Valley has evolved a critical mass of engineers and venture capitalists and all the support structure, the law firms, the real estate, all that are all actually geared toward being accepting of startups. In order to have your voice be heard in Washington, you have to make some little contribution. I don't spend my time pontificating about high-concept things. I spend my time solving engineering and manufacturing problems. When I was in college, I wanted to be involved in things that would change the world. I think you should always bear in mind that entropy is not on your side. I think it matters whether someone has a good heart. People should pursue what they're passionate about. That will make them happier than pretty much anything else. Really, the only thing that makes sense is to strive for greater collective enlightenment. I say something, and then it usually happens. Maybe not on schedule, but it usually happens. Tesla is here to stay and keep fighting for the electric car revolution. I don't create companies for the sake of creating companies, but to get things done. Boeing just took $20 billion in 10 years to improve the efficiency of their planes by 10%. That's pretty lame. I have a design in mind for a vertical liftoff supersonic jet that would be a really big improvement. You need to live in a dome initially, but over time you could terraform Mars to look like Earth and eventually walk around outside without anything on. So it's a fixer-upper of a planet. I do love email. Wherever possible, I try to communicate asynchronously. I'm really good at email. People work better when they know what the goal is and why. It is important that people look forward to coming to work in the morning and enjoy working. Obviously, Tesla is about helping solve the consumption of energy in a sustainable manner, but you need the production of energy in a sustainable manner. In order for us to have a future that's exciting and inspiring, it has to be one where we're a space-faring civilization. If you get up in the morning and think the future is going to be better, it is a bright day. Otherwise, it's not. I think life on Earth must be about more than just solving problems. It's got to be something inspiring, even if it is vicarious. The future of humanity is going to bifurcate in two directions. Either it's going to become multiplanetary, or it's going to remain confined to one planet, and eventually there's going to be an extinction event. My background educationally is physics and economics, and I grew up in sort of an engineering environment. My father is an electromechanical engineer. And so there were lots of engineering things around me. If something's important enough, you should try. Even if the probable outcome is failure. It's okay to have your eggs in one basket as long as you control what happens to that basket. Any product that needs a manual to work is broken. If you're trying to create a company, it's like baking a cake. You have to have all the ingredients in the right proportion. We're running the most dangerous experiment in history right now, which is to see how much carbon dioxide the atmosphere can handle before there is an environmental catastrophe. Great companies are built on great products. Life is too short for long-term grudges. Brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. Sometimes it will be ahead, other times it will be behind. But brand is simply a collective impression some have about a product. I'm interested in things that change the world or that affect the future in wondrous, new technology where you see it, and you're like, wow, how did that even happen? How is that possible? I think that's the single best piece of advice. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better and questioning yourself. Patience is a virtue, and I'm learning patience. It's a tough lesson. They were building a Ferrari for every launch, when it was possible that a Honda Accord might do the trick. I take the position that I'm always to some degree wrong, and the aspiration is to be less wrong. I think there are more politicians in favor of electric cars than against. There are still some that are against, and I think the reasoning for that varies depending on the person, but in some cases, they just don't believe in climate change. They think oil will last forever. SpaceX is only 12 years old now. Between now and 2040, the company's lifespan will have tripled. If we have linear improvement in technology, as opposed to logarithmic, then we should have a significant base on Mars, perhaps with thousands or tens of thousands of people. If anyone thinks they'd rather be in a different part of history, they're probably not a very good student of history. Life sucked in the old days. People knew very little, and you were likely to die at a young age of some horrible disease. You'd probably have no teeth by now. It would be particularly awful if you were a woman. An asteroid or a supervolcano could certainly destroy us, but we also face risks the dinosaurs never saw: an engineered virus, nuclear war, inadvertent creation of a micro black hole, or some as yet unknown technology could spell the end of us. What most people know but don't realize they know is that the world is almost entirely solar-powered already. If the sun wasn't there, we'd be a frozen ice ball at 3 degrees Kelvin, and the sun powers the entire system of precipitation. The whole ecosystem is solar-powered. The space shuttle was often used as an example of why you shouldn't even attempt to make something reusable. But one failed experiment does not invalidate the greater goal. If that was the case, we'd never have had the light bulb. The reality is gas prices should be much more expensive than they are because we're not incorporating the true damage to the environment and the hidden costs of mining oil and transporting it to the US. Whenever you have an unpriced externality, you have a bit of a market failure, to the degree that eternality remains unpriced. If you want to grow a giant redwood, you need to make sure the seeds are okay, nurture the sapling, and work out what might potentially stop it from growing all the way along. Anything that breaks it at any point stops that growth. It's not as though we can keep burning coal in our power plants. Coal is a finite resource, too. We must find alternatives, and it's a better idea to find alternatives sooner than wait until we run out of coal, and in the meantime, put God knows how many trillions of tons of CO2 that used to be buried underground into the atmosphere. Automotive franchise laws were put in place decades ago to prevent a manufacturer from unfairly opening stores in direct competition with an existing franchise dealer that had already invested time, money, and effort to open and promote their business. The problem is that at a lot of big companies, process becomes a substitute for thinking. You're encouraged to behave like a little gear in a complex machine. Frankly, it allows you to keep people who aren't that smart, who aren't that creative. I do think there is a lot of potential if you have a compelling product and people are willing to pay a premium for that. I think that is what Apple has shown. You can buy a much cheaper cell phone or laptop, but Apple's product is so much better than the alternative, and people are willing to pay that premium. For all the supporters of Tesla over the years, and it's been several years now and there have been some very tough times, I'd just like to say thank you very much. I deeply appreciate the support, particularly through the darkest times. I really do encourage other manufacturers to bring electric cars to market. It's a good thing, and they need to bring it to market and keep iterating and improving and make better and better electric cars, and that's what's going to result in humanity achieving a sustainable transport future. I wish it was growing faster than it is. The revolutionary breakthrough will come with rockets that are fully and rapidly reusable. We will never conquer Mars unless we do that. It'll be too expensive. The American colonies would never have been pioneered if the ships that crossed the ocean hadn't been reusable. If you go back a few hundred years, what we take for granted today would seem like magic: being able to talk to people over long distances, to transmit images, flying, accessing vast amounts of data like an oracle. These are all things that would have been considered magic a few hundred years ago. I always invest my own money in the companies that I create. I don't believe in the whole thing of just using other people's money. I don't think that's right. I'm not going to ask other people to invest in something if I'm not prepared to do so myself. A company is a group organized to create a product or service, and it is only as good as its people and how excited they are about creating. I do want to recognize a ton of super talented people. I just happen to be the face of the companies. A utility can handle up to 20% of production from solar, and that helps the grid because it produces electricity when needed. Solar power peaks in the middle of the day, and that's also when air conditioning is running and businesses are operating, so power production matches usage. Yeah, well, I think anyone who likes fast cars will love the Tesla. And it has fantastic handling, by the way. I mean, this car will crush a Porsche on the track, just crush it. So if you like fast cars, you'll love this car. And then, oh, by the way, it happens to be electric and it's twice the efficiency of a Prius. I like the word autopilot more than I like the word self-driving. Self-driving sounds like it's going to do something you don't want it to do. Autopilot is a good thing to have in planes, and we should have it in cars. With DNA, you have to be able to tell which genes are turned on or off. Current DNA sequencing cannot do that. The next generation of DNA sequencing needs to be able to do this. If somebody invents this, then we can start to very precisely identify cures for diseases. It would take 6 months to get to Mars if you go there slowly, with optimal energy cost. Then it would take 18 months for the planets to realign. Then it would take 6 months to get back, though I can see getting the travel time down to 3 months pretty quickly if America has the will. There are really two things that have to occur in order for a new technology to be affordable to the mass market. One is you need economies of scale. The other is you need to iterate on the design. You need to go through a few versions. I think the high-tech industry is used to developing new things very quickly. It's the Silicon Valley way of doing business. You either move very quickly and you work hard to improve your product technology, or you get destroyed by some other company. There have only been about a half dozen genuinely important events in the 4-billion-year saga of life on Earth: single-celled life, multi-celled life, differentiation into plants and animals, movement of animals from water to land, and the advent of mammals and consciousness. It's obviously tricky to convert cellulose to a useful biofuel. I think actually the most efficient way to use cellulose is to burn it in a cogeneration power plant. That will yield the most energy, and that is something you can do today. If we could do high-speed rail in California just half a notch above what they've done on the Shanghai line in China, and if we had a straight path from LA to San Francisco, as well as the Milk Run, at least that would be progress. To make an embarrassing admission, I like video games. That's what got me into software engineering when I was a kid. I wanted to make money so I could buy a better computer to play better video games, nothing like saving the world. If you look at space companies, they've failed either because they've had a technical solution where success was not a possible outcome, they were unable to attract a critical mass of talent, or they just ran out of money. The finish line is usually a lot further away than you think. So we originally expected to make about 35 gigawatt-hours at the cell level and about 50 gigawatt-hours at the module or pack level. Now we are expecting to do about 150 gigawatt-hours in the same volumetric space as the original design. It is definitely true that the fundamental enabling technology for electric cars is lithium-ion as a cell chemistry technology. In the absence of that, I don't think it's possible to make an electric car that is competitive with a gasoline car. There have to be reasons that you get up in the morning and you want to live. Why do you want to live? What's the point? What inspires you? What do you love about the future? If the future does not include being out there among the stars and being a multi-planet species, I find that incredibly depressing. If you don't have sustainable energy, you have unsustainable energy. The fundamental value of a company like Tesla is the degree to which it accelerates the advent of sustainable energy faster than it would otherwise occur. It's important that we attempt to extend life beyond Earth now. It is the first time in the 4-billion-year history of Earth that it's been possible, and that window could be open for a long time, hopefully it is, or it could be open for a short time. We should err on the side of caution and do something now. I've actually made a prediction that within 30 years a majority of new cars made in the United States will be electric. And I don't mean hybrid, I mean fully electric.